All right. Well, as I said, thanks everyone. We've got Ricky here today, I see, who's joined us as well. Otherwise, we've got the same crew from hearings the other day. Marjorie's joining us from ODT and Monica Sun. So, assume for this is public for the purposes of everything they're doing. Obviously, our task is to come up with a recommendation to council on the navigation safety bylaw. We'll try and work through and be as clear as we can around the different points and outcomes that we're deciding on. If there's any landing on, we'll try and land on as many things as we can. There might be a couple of things we need to come back on at the end, but we'll do our best. Is there anything you guys have got to come back to us on from what we talked about after the hearing the other day?
Yes, so we've got a little slide deck prepared that will help to guide the discussion and come back to you on a few of those things. So just get Jane to share that when you
Okay, sorry, my device is just loading.
Yeah, that's right.
You feel free to email to councillors and we can
Just making sure. I can take you through the purpose slide to begin with, because I think that's probably doesn't need to be up there. But yeah, thank you, Chair. You talked about making determinations on the recommendations in the hearings report. So there's 3 recommendations in the hearings report. 1 is to note the contents of the report, 2 is to receive all the submissions and hear the submitters, and 3 is to recommend to council final form of the bylaw with changes as an outcome of the consultation process. In terms of recommendation 3, the panel has 3 options available to them that are set out in the hearings report. I don't necessarily need to read them word for word unless you'd like me to. They're
just outline them. Yeah.
Sorry.
Just outline them roughly for us.
So the first option is to receive all the submissions and recommend that council adopt the bylaw with no changes to the draft bylaw that went out for consultation. The second option is to receive all submissions, recommend to council that the draft bylaw be adopted with changes as recommended in the hearings report, or possibly additional recommended changes as you see fit. And then the third option is that the hearings panel receive all submissions and recommend to council that council not adopt a navigation safety bylaw.
So that's just to clarify, does that mean it reverts to the current one, or we had no navigation safety bylaw?
The later.
Okay.
And the pros and cons of each of those options are set out in the council and the hearing report. A bit later on page 42, paragraph 84. So the slide deck that we'll bring up in a moment will help to guide discussions and deliberations. And of course, we're going to have to be flexible, of course, in terms of how you might want to move for different topics. Sure.
Do you want to, is it easy to email it to somebody?
Yeah, I'm just going to do that because the thing is that the meeting has got a Teams link in it, but we're using Zoom.
Okay.
So I can't join that meeting.
Kerry, would you be able to send it, because I might have a delay on my email?
No, I'm just about to
Should I send it? Oh, you're going to do it, okay.
Yeah.
I've just shared you the presentation, Jane, so it should be in your inbox.
Yeah, I've got it. Yeah.
And we'll update the QLDC website with this slide deck. So there's nothing in it that's.
We could email it to the to this computer and share it from there.
We're fine, if we can see it, we're fine, we'll just email it, it's useful for us. We'll put it in front of us.
Okay.
Yeah, so the slide deck basically focuses on the hearing report recommendations as a sort of way of helping to move through where we got to in the hearings report in terms of officer recommendations, but of course we can address any other concerns that the panel might have or any questions that they want to resolve before making recommendations. So the first topic that we'll address is ski lanes.
It's not allowing me to access that.
Okay, so I have sent it to the computer.
Okay.
Where do I find
View and search Outlook.
Down here in the search bar.
Yeah.
Send it. Delay on my emails will take 5 minutes. Delay on my emails will take 5 minutes. I'll just share my screen with you.
Well, I suppose while we're waiting that, I suppose we've got the benefit of Ricky here now. Do you guys have any questions for Ricky from what we discussed the other day, given he's the man on the ground as to what some of the drivers and questions were that behind some of these changes?
Yep, I do. The main one I've got, and I asked it the other day, was about the location of the ski lane at Kelvin Grove. And you mentioned you'd been out there, I think with Ricky as well. Yeah. And just, particularly on the fact that there's been no feedback from the consultation on that location. And I guess I was concerned that by shifting it in a different direction than what was consulted on, that if that had been in the consultation document, you might have got some more feedback on it. That's my main concern. I think, having been there and seen how it operates, the option that was in the consultation document seemed reasonable, but I'm not, and I know you've got the reasons, reasonable, I know you've got the reasons for the adjustment for that, but I'm not convinced personally, but I am concerned about the consultation side of that. It might have received some points.
It's on the top of the list, so well done.
It is. That's one thing.
Procedure.
I mean, my concern is that it puts it right in the middle of that beach, right in front of the car park, the barbecue, the playground, the toilet block, which is where everyone wants to be when they're just going to the beach.
Okay, so let's just work through options here. So we've got the red lines of the current ski lane. That's
roughly,
correct.
I actually think the left-hand red line is much closer up to the right.
Okay.
I think it's nearer where the right-hand yellow or new line is.
And the green lines are what was consulted on, or the now proposed?
That is what we can.
What you're recommending.
What you're recommending.
Yeah. That's the current recommendation.
Yeah, that's correct. So the consulted version was on the slide to the right of that image rather than the left.
So I think what was consulted on is the red line was much further down the page, but it was going to shift further down.
Yeah, that's correct.
Further down to that bottom right corner.
So the question is, do we keep it the same, or do we go right, or do we go left? Now, have you got any feedback on what your preferred there is, Ricky, or what the benefits are?
And just from the observations over the last couple of years at peak times, most guests or swimmers or pests people would come down in their car, get out of the car and walk straight into the water. So the idea of moving it to the left of the screen is to open up some area there, so they're not swimming and going straight to the ski lane.
Yeah, I still think there's a bit of an overlap there. So maybe if that's the case, or if that's the intention, maybe it needs to go further to the left. Is that feasible?
Well, I think we heard that it's muddy, it's not suitable because it's sort of muddy, or there's sort of two access points up there, because there's the turning bay at the end, which is the bit that is probably the primary one, and then at the left-hand end, there's also another parking right in the corner of the bay near the blue thing. There's another parking area where people tend to sort of park and walk down to the water there too.
Yeah, that's much smaller than the main
Much
car
smaller,
park.
yeah.
It's public parking
I
there.
agree,
And
the
toilets
toilet
are-
blocks, yeah.
And there's a playground just in behind the trees above where it says public parking, and there's a barbecue
Yeah.
just under the trees where it says Kelvin Grove, or maybe the next group of trees to the right.
Okay, so do we, firstly, we need to separate, are we presuming we need to separate the swimmers and the ski lane, which is, I think, a reasonably obvious yes, because of how they function? And the second question is, how do we make a safe swimming area that's easily accessible?
I heard that being the parking is just a little bit of that forest there.
Yeah.
Where it says public.
Yeah, directly, yeah, there's a turning in, yeah.
So the record is pointing in straight down from there.
So,
Gavin only suggesting moving it further left.
and further left again.
Well, that's the other alternative, I guess. So, I guess based on the experience that I had there, I thought the original proposal of moving it further to the bottom right-hand corner was reasonable. I thought it was
So that people come
It's
down
still
the
overlapping
turning
the
head
car
and then
park
go
a
to
little
the right and access, which is a nice beach, I know that. Yeah.
But even to have that, usable with the ski lane, it would still overlap the car park a little bit. And it seemed to be more people using the beach as a beach, from the car park.
Just to clarify, the one that we consulted on, the red line, well, the line is where it's coming out from that clearly defined signage area, is it, and going to the right of that, is it?
So the consulted version was reduce the width of the ski lane by shifting the eastern pole 50 metres to the west. So this is north up this way.
It says west when it means north. So I think
So the eastern pole, so that direction.
But I think in
50
actual
metres, so
fact,
it puts it closer to where the Kelvin Grove sign is,
no,
and that it's mostly to the right of that, is that right?
no, I think in actual fact, though, in practice, the existing eastern pole is roughly where it says clearly defined signage on the right-hand side.
That's the eastern pole.
The marker is just
Some clarification on it. Ricky.
Whereas the pole's definitely down at the bottom of the screen on the right.
so that's the right-hand pole. The left-hand pole
The
existing
western one.
is nearer where it says Kelvin Grove, or that group of trees that says Kelvin Grove. I had a look on, I haven't had a chance to go around in the last few days, but just looking on Google Maps on Street View, you can clearly see where the two poles are. And it's,
So you're saying that the pole is currently where the green line is.
yes.
It's not where the red line is.
No, there's one there. The right-hand one is there, but the left-hand one, if you're looking at the picture, is there.
Oh, so this one is actually, yeah.
I think so.
All right.
Um,
Do you want to just point on the screen where the poles are?
Should have most make them out on the screen.
So I think the right-hand red line is.
It's definitely down by this tree, because when we were out on site looking at it, we looked at jumping across the screen, didn't we, Craig?
Yeah,
It was around here. Can't see
it may not be exact, separating the lines so that we can see the difference between them, but it's in the vicinity of between those trees.
And the boat round's to the right, isn't it, further? Or do you go round to the left, around Kelvin Heights one?
Oh,
Is there one near the yacht club?
One near the yacht club that's not used tomorrow for stand up and point.
Yeah.
So most vessels would launch around
But
here.
at the main Kelvin Heights site. Okay, that's cool.
So that there's a couple of other things that come into the conversation, and one is that from here on round this way, I'm sorry, the image is not zoomed out far enough, it gets really rocky and not serviceable to
You can see that, yeah.
bring vessels in, and it also takes you around in front of the yacht club. And there's a bunch of moorings in there, and it lends itself to maybe kayaking or paddleboarding, but not putting a boat up on the shore. So the concept was that passive users leaving from this area have all that area to explore without crossing through a ski lane. So it was just another consideration.
Sorry, I did get the wrong tree. So it's actually near the middle tree. The tree that's in the middle of those two green lines, it's near that tree.
That one there.
Comes right there where your cursor is.
Yep.
So you can see it on Google Maps. It's right there, see?
How
Right there.
recent was that image of the
Or have they been shifted? Anytime recently?
Okay,
No.
so, all right, so the question is, we've sort of got to go split the beach in half, really, go one way or the other, and give a decent swimming area. On the left or the right, which is, I don't know.
Well, I have another question as well, just on the same topic. Ski lanes are only the application of them only applies when there's actually someone being towed, doesn't it? But there's no one skiing being towed.
Yeah,
Normal regulations apply.
yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
And so you can use it as a beach. But I imagine that if it's a fine sunny day and everyone's at the beach, there's some people there water skiing, just getting or whatever.
That is, it provides, Ricky could probably speak to it more, some tricky enforcement. Monitoring, there's a bunch of people using the beach, and a vessel comes in to use it for its intended purpose. Technically, they would have to vacate to do it. So
What's the actual movement between that red and green line on the left? I mean, it kind of looks like it's 20 metres at the most.
oh,
Or is it, in reality, is it more than, could
no,
be more
less,
than that?
yeah, 15, 20 minutes.
Okay, so if we're to take the right-hand green line, can we move the left-hand green line any further to the left?
The green up here, yes, we can, yeah. To open up the beach more of the recreational passive users.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can take the green line in the middle, so that opens up this beach easily accessible from the turning gear,
Yes,
and move that other green line a little bit further, another 20 metres or something. Does that work?
yep, so move the left-hand green line towards the trees a bit further.
Yeah.
And that would move the right green line further. Yeah, we can do that easily, yeah.
So it's moving it entirely to the east, just to confirm.
Just further right. So it's more in the middle of the two car parking areas, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So move over this way.
How do people feel about that?
So then my question though, and it's probably a good one for you, I mentioned, is given that it's completely different to what was consulted on, does that open up any issues?
Well, what was consulted on was reducing the widths by shifting the eastern pole 15 meters. So, I knew that the community were aware that there were changes on the table, and it was an open invitation to provide any input they had.
Okay.
I tend to agree that it's within
If we
scope.
were going to propose to remove it altogether,
Yeah.
I'd say that was out of scope.
Right.
I think we're
Okay. So yeah, so based on the fact that the consultation was allowing for some movement of it, we were open to be able to move it based on these discussions we received that.
Yeah, I think
Well, even
so.
even with the
Objective.
Bible, we can sort of adjust it anyway.
Well, it depends on how we record it, but this was part of that specificity thing we talked about the other day, wasn't it?
That's my understanding after our discussions.
Yeah, okay. All right, so I won't use the word move, but I suggest that we accept the proposed ski lane in green, moving the southern, I suppose it's the southern green line further south
We'll move the whole thing just slightly.
Yeah, okay, we'll moving the ski lane slightly to the south by, what, 20 metres?
20 metres will take the left to the tree and move the right across to almost in front of the tree, which would, yeah.
Yeah, happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So
So does that give you sufficient direction
So it
for
ends up being
that
those
decision?
two bits of beach either side of that tree in the middle.
Yeah,
Chain link trees, basically.
yeah. Yeah, and then this area becomes the swimming area.
Yeah.
And they also can swim up the other end if they choose to.
Yeah.
Okay, does that give you clear guidance? Okay, all right, next one.
Since Bay.
Wilson's Bay. I'm gonna fast track this a little bit. I'm gonna suggest we retain Wilson's Bay.
Which it is retained.
It's
just a
Yeah,
Just a
and so we land on that.
Yeah.
No further amendment.
No.
Okay, move on.
Sunshine Bay is pretty straightforward as well, isn't it? It's an existing.
There's no change there, isn't there? So that's fine. Okay, so Kinloch Main Beach, so you're still proposing to remove the ski lane from Kinloch Main Beach? We didn't have it, did we? We didn't hear from anyone on that.
No.
Did we have submissions on it? Outside of it?
Don't believe so. I double checked, but there was, I don't remember actually talking to other at all in the hearing report, so I don't know.
Okay, can you speak to, Kingston, down the bottom? So speak to the issues there, it's just too difficult to manage, or what's the?
Well, the shifting of the Dart River, that beach is now high and dry.
Dart River, wrong end.
Sorry,
Kinloch.
sorry, come up here with the shifting of the river, it's high and dry, and it sits still up. The ski lane's now 50 metres in length.
Yeah.
Inland. So
Similar to the wharf that doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
is there, so there's no practical use of the current ski lane, is that what you're saying? Okay. No submissions, basically. How do you feel about that? Happy to remove it?
It's still struggling where it is.
Oh, it's right, it'd be right on the foreshore, wouldn't it?
It's Kinloch.
Oh, sorry, no, I was Kingston, not, okay, right, so.
It is the dark.
Yeah, sorry, it's over here, but yeah, no, I understand, it's totally, yeah, the river's brain, okay, that's fine, there's no one border skiing at Kinloch anywhere, is it? Okay, remove, yep. Okay,
Yeah, I think.
sorry, I bummed you there, I was thinking, yeah, Kingston, not Kinloch. I didn't even think people would be border skiing at Kinloch.
Yeah, Frankton Beach.
Frankton Beach, so we've got a slight oddity here that we heard advice that it's not practical at low water, which is fair enough, but we also had a discussion around whether that matters, and it just provides the opportunity, if the conditions allow, that they can use it at higher water. So do we remove it or do we keep it?
Well, I think the main thing for me is that we had a lot of submissions about maintaining a number of ski lanes in Frankton Arm.
Around optionality.
That one may not be the most used, but it seemed to have enough support to definitely think about keeping it. And it's in a place, it's on a big beach, and it's in a place that doesn't affect really anyone else using the beach.
Sorry, I just wanted to point out, I'm getting the names wrong here. When we said Wilson's Bay, I was thinking Willow Place, but we're happy with Wilson's Bay. That was supposed to be retained anyway, so that's fine. We'll leave that.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we shifting the ski lane at Wilson's Bay though? Just to go back to that.
Yes.
Okay, so we're taking the recommendation, the draft final position. Okay, easy. All right, so Kinloch, Frankton, we're going to retain Frankton, even though it's not available in low water, is the answer, I think.
For me, it was like, out of all the submissions, the Greenstone one, I could see this as like, super shallow and it's not the most useful, but I get that anecdotally, we wanted to sort of create as much optionality that we talked about.
Any practical issues
I
there?
don't feel like
Ricky?
No, this area here is used for windsurfers as well, quite a lot.
Yeah.
Just to show us, last year we had to pull jet skis off the shallows. We had reports of jet skis floating in the water. We went out and found they're actually not floating, they're sitting on the bottom. So the reason why we put this forward is it creates a bit of a hazard just because of the shallowness.
Yeah.
I sort of get that experience. I don't know how Gavin feels about it, but
So we've got the same issue. We acknowledge that we've got the same issue with Dublin Bay, for instance, that it's effectively impractical ski lane. But do we either want to remove it, or do we have to? Does it still provide some optionality, or does it really create any problems? We had submissions from the wind riders too that they are keen to use this more, well, to get some acknowledgement of that. Does a ski lane stop a wing foiler from using that area? Yeah, or windy versus water skiing. So that's probably and that if we take that view like we did with the swimming, if it's not being used by water skis, then it's safe for other. But
I guess, if it remains there, it gives another option in a busy, because Frankton is busy, isn't it, for water skiing, when the conditions are right. It's up to the boat owner whether they decide to go in there if it's too shallow. And if they don't, then it's stays available for everyone else to use.
Okay.
I think if you look at all those three, Frankton Beach, Willow Place, and Frankton Arm North Side, and Loop Road, so all four of them. Loop Road, the recommendation is to retain it. I think Frankton Arm North Side, we didn't hear much about that.
No.
It's on an odd spot anyway.
Well,
I think that would be the one that we could afford.
Okay. All right.
But I would suggest that we're keeping.
All right. Well, let's keep Frankton Beach. We may consider, and this is just for noting that you may consider signage that it, be careful in low water or something, that it's okay. So keeping Frankton Beach, Willow Place.
Yeah, I suggest keeping that.
Keeping Willow Place. I think we had submissions on that. Frankton North, I don't even know where that is, to be fair. Can someone point me?
It's in an odd spot up here somewhere.
Can we just go back to Willow Place just to make sure
Oh, yeah, okay. Willow Place, ski lane, okay. Oh, so all right. So do we have a conflict between the access lane and the?
So maybe go back to your recommended options. Sorry, just briefly. So the middle table is saying what was proposed in the right-hand columns.
post submissions.
Yeah.
We understand that.
And so Willow Place is one that's definitely worth looking at.
It's one we've heard from and had submissions on.
So the only question is there a conflict between the access lane that's proposed and the existing? Because obviously they come in through that there, don't they? Is that a problem or not?
You're talking about this?
Yeah.
Yes, that's not quite orientated right. Apologies, it should be like this. So, but
It is.
Yeah, this was.
Is that a mapping error or is there a conflict?
It's a technology marking up a screenshot quickly for the purposes of this discussion. It's not to scale and it's indicative, just to show, yes, that access lane that's proposed as part of the dam access does intersect. And again, it's not to scale. Ricky was there this morning and probably could speak better to this, but I just wanted to bring it up in a holistic view so that we could sort of see how they're interrelated.
Okay. So, can we safely retain Willow Place?
There's already, so the boats already use that area anyway, around the willow tree to get into the Hilton, don't they?
Yeah.
And there's already an existing ski lane there. It doesn't sound like there's been any accidents or incidents.
We haven't really seen anyone using the ski lane for a long time.
Right.
And the ferries now.
That wasn't the submissions we got. Anyway.
The ferries track in through this track to get to the Hilton jetty and back out through here.
Yeah.
And we've another ferry service coming along before Christmas that'll increase the flow and realtor of those coming in and out.
The way it's aligned though, there's good visibility for the boats coming out.
What's the purple dashes further up?
Good question. When Ricky was here this morning, he had a discussion with some of the, I'll let you speak to this, Ricky, but some of the locals who had questions on where the actual ski lane was. There was two versions of it, so I chucked a couple of little lines in there just in case that needed to be clarified.
Can we go back to that other?
It must be marked on the ground though.
So what I was going to say was, with the orientation of the ski lane in the high-speed access area, if there's boats skiing in there, there's good visibility for them coming out of the beach, for anything coming in from Frankton Arm towards the Hilton, and for anything coming from the Hilton into that access area.
It's always on the provider. It's safe to do so, isn't it? So
yeah,
doesn't change the need for observation and people avoid each other. Happy to retain it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Next one, Loop Road. You've recommended. We didn't hear it yet. Let's retain that too if we don't need to.
Yeah.
You've recommended it stay, so let's go. Move to the next one.
Yes. Can I just sort of stop on that one in terms of the report to council recommending that the basis for the hearing panel's recommendation is around submitted feedback?
Yep.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, we took on board the submitter's comments around the load bus. Yeah.
Thank you.
And Frankton Arm north side, that's what we're going to remove.
Yeah,
I still don't even understand where that is. Yeah.
So there were a couple of submissions, I believe, I need to check that, but they were suggesting that in from one direction it provides shelter and that the congestion issue.
And also the boat ramps on the north side to the free.
Where is it exactly?
It's on map 4 of the US. It's a deleted map.
Is there actually? There's no road access to it, anyways. It's somewhere along the Frankton Track, isn't it?
It doesn't reach some town. Oh, it's under the Reese.
Yeah. So there's no. Yeah.
I'm happy to remove it. Doesn't sort of seem to be a hard fought one. There's jetties and various things there.
It's unusual, and it's like you say, it's for certain wind conditions, but that wind doesn't really happen all that often from the north.
Right.
And the
It's
justification.
familiar in that way.
All right. I'll suggest that we take on board the recommendation and remove it.
And the reasoning for that.
Well, it says recommended. We didn't hear any compelling reason to keep it.
We hear from a lot of people.
Reasons are in the hearing report
Yeah.
for that recommendation, so
Yeah, we'll just take those on board. Yeah. All right, next. We've got Loop Road. Oh, Royce Bay, Main. Okay. All right, it's Royce Bay. I figure we've got 3 options. We've got remove it completely. Keep it on board with the current restrictions, or keep it open completely. When I say the current restrictions, I mean the summer closure. I know from chatting to you previously, Ricky, that it's almost impossible to administer over the busy summer period because of just the sheer amount of people swimming and coming and going, which I completely accept. I've fully supported the peak closures there. Do you have any thoughts on whether it's an issue outside of that period as much, or whether it's I'm just trying to work out, has it done its day? Is there a seasonal one that works? Because the midwinter water skiing, for instance, I think it's a nice feature that doesn't really conflict with anybody.
I think people are still swimming outside the closed period.
Yeah.
So we're still having that crossover between skiers and swimmers outside the closed period. It's just the whole waterfront has changed since the
stage 2.
Yeah.
Is it worth considering launch lane type approach? Or would you prefer a more seasonal?
How big is it at the moment? I mean, I know where the town side marker is. Where's the other one? How far up?
I don't have a dimension. I want to say 160 metres, but I'd have to.
It's not as far as McDougall Street though.
No,
That image sort of implies that it's way up near McDougall Street, but it's not much narrower. Okay. Without having to get a formal exemption, how do we accommodate? I mean, like I said, I think that midwinter water ski thing's a nice fixture to the support somehow the water ski club and whatever, but I accept the conflict in the summer period. But is there a 3-month closure that makes sense to us, December to February?
yeah, just
Or is it too hard to
was
manage and posts and things?
there was a lot of positive submissions around the efficacy of the seasonal closure. When we weighed this collectively with the Hardmaster's comments and the information that was presented beforehand, knowing that this is a 5-year bylaw and looking at the increase of use across the board in all different types, and knowing that that increase is going to continue, part of the decision for this specific one was around maybe within the later part of that 5-year period, knowing that the use will change in the bay. And sort of having an area without a ski lane that is set aside for that passive use.
Yep.
So it wasn't, that was a factor.
Yeah, I totally hear that. I think as well, we've heard from a lot of people just the ability to be able to launch from there, because we can tell even the narrowing of that ski lane, things will get congested. I sort of share the appetite around the launch lane approach, because it's far narrower and less problematic when dropping people off, which I consider is the majority of the danger when it comes to ski lanes. And it still offers what people are asking for, which is being able to learn and start from the beach in a way. So I'm just wondering if that's a way forward that we could retain some access to that, but narrows it, makes 90% of it still passive use, that allows for.
Yeah. I think the summer peak is still too difficult, too much conflict, I think. But I outside of that, like I said, I'm okay with the 6 weeks, but I don't know how manageable it is. I don't if it's longer or the same.
There were certainly submissions that said they could understand and live with the closure over that period of time.
They understood the peak closure, and I think that I don't know when we can land.
I guess another question I have, and it's been a long time since I've water skied, and I haven't done it. I haven't skied from a beach. I've always started in the water. But out of all the people that start from the beach, how many of them do the big loop in to finish on the beach? How many?
Exactly, water ski though.
Well, I think the majority of them end up in the water on the boat.
Yeah, hard to quantify that, but I think that a large percent do, particularly learner skiers. Sure, very experienced skiers might be able to come in and do the big hero split.
When you're considering a launch lane compared to a ski lane, there's a whole lot of extra real estate given towards the people that can do that, that can cruise in from the boat, compared to the people that just want to start from the beach.
Another benefit to the launch lane is this difficulty we have currently when you step out of the car park onto a large area where the poles are a long way apart.
Yeah.
So the signage is very hard to manage.
I
don't think anyone wants signs every 20 metres along the beach either. But when the poles, like potentially at Ely Point, are really close, you'll be actually visibly able to see both of them and understand.
Yeah, it's far more intuitive, which I think for me is a big part of this whole intention of the bylaw is not being hidden in a law somewhere, but it being quite obvious when you arrive of what the right thing to do is, so that people can see it and behave better or safer.
I'm going to take a step back here and look at the bay a bit more holistically and say, look, we're effectively going to lose 3 ski lanes when we in Roy's, all of them in Roy's Bay. I'm just looking at, you know, those other two. I do think Waterfall Creek's, I think we can accommodate more there, and retaining Ely Point, and does that, you know, is that a good balance?
The green on Waterfall Creek, is that not where it is already?
Question.
It's something that I've been trying to chase up, knowing that you would ask me that today. And I've been on the phone with the previous harbour master also, trying to figure out, because lots of people, and we even had submissions saying that the coordinates suggest, and historically they think that it was in this, what do we call Waterfall Creek West location, which actually does give you a pretty good launch angle in the right conditions.
Sort of behind Ruby Island too.
Ruby Island. Even the previous harbour master wasn't able to explain how the poles got from there to where they are, so that's an unknown.
Well, I'm happy to support that as you've shown it in terms of, because I
That
think
makes a huge amount of sense, because people can, you know, they can launch their boat and just pull around there. People can walk along with their blanket and their umbrella and get there and join the family. It's really good. And equally, I'm not convinced there's a huge amount of conflict further towards Edgewater, so I'm happy with the current one there. So can we have both there? Yep. All right.
Saying 2 ski lanes there.
Yeah, tick.
Oh, good.
2 ski lanes that we're acknowledging, for one of the reasons we're acknowledging the need for easily accessible ski lanes in less congested locations.
Or acknowledging that Helen did for the road.
Yeah. And all right, we'll go to Ely Point. I think we had a reasonable, you expressed support for the launch lane idea. So it's not a ski lane, it's a reconfigured access lane with a launch lane.
I've socialised this with a lot of people I know and are quite passionate about it, and they're like, yeah, it's pretty practical for a launch lane. They seem quite supportive, because I think everybody appreciates the sort of congestion and the relationship between boats parking on the beach to actually using the launch, and so everyone seems pretty happy with what's recommended in terms of that approach.
I think one of the key things at Ely Point is going to be signage, because I think if we've got real clear signs for people when they turn up, they go, oh, the swimming area, ski area, launch lane, you know, boat ramp launch lane area. I think that's really important. So we're accepting the recommendation at Ely Point.
Yep.
Yep. Yes. Okay. Thank
Can I
you.
just add something in regards to that? So just at the end here, I want to go to bring to your attention that so for the recommended option, we'd like to introduce provisions to the bylaw that would only allow vessels to launch from there rather than approach the foreshore. So vessels will be prohibited from approaching the foreshore using the launch lane when another person is using it for that purpose. So that would be a new provision specifying that in part 5, which is the.
Do you mean while skiing or while towing? Or while I'm just conscious that people go. They can probably manage that with skiing because they have a ski, fall in, climb onto the boat, pull back in.
Yeah.
It's harder with a donut or a.
It could almost say
slow down.
speed greater than 5 knots.
Well, that's right, because okay, so you could slow down with a donut
And pull
and pull into the beach, still get your kids back into the beach. I think that makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
So we're still haven't quite landed on Roy's Bay.
So Roy's Bay, yeah. So once again, keeping a holistic view in mind, do we ditch it or seasonal restrictions or something else?
And given that there's nearly extra ski lane at Waterfall Creek.
Yeah. That's fine.
Could it be reduced to a launch lane?
and seasonal.
Well, I'm not sure you need, if it's seasonal, I'm not sure you need to explain. Because there's plenty of room in the off season. What seasonal look like, if we're in real terms, December's obviously busy with people sitting. I don't think it's that busy before that.
No, December through to end of March.
End of March, 4 months. Okay. Yeah,
So keep it as a ski lane.
keep it as a ski lane, go to seasonal, close it over the summer period when people are really wanting to hang out at the beach.
Happy with that.
4 month seasonal one retains some local access, isn't seen to be closing it completely. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I'm happy.
4 month closure. Okay. Better than the bylaw rather than through an annual review. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Can I just ask a clarification on, do we have any other seasonal closures, not speed up, let's probably don't want to go there, to make sure we're in line with the same dates that we're.
Only the Clutha River one, but that's an uplift. So,
Yeah.
well,
So,
no, it's a
I
pro-
didn't
it's a
think so,
prohibition,
I
actually, it's not an uplift.
just testing to make sure that we're being consistent.
This is the first one. We're
Yeah.
at ski lane.
And so beginning of December and March is, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just remind me, tell the top of you, what's the seasonal closure on the police?
In April, so it's a month longer. We could line it up with that, but
I don't think we need to, they are quite distinct areas,
Yeah.
but you may wish to, for consistency, consider that.
I think that's
Because all we're trying to do is get rid of that summer season by April as well, I'm sure.
okay.
Kind of different user groups.
Yeah, it's a Jeffo.
This is.
Yeah. Okay, so we're all right, we're sorted there. All right, Glendew Bay. Look, I think the tapering of the ski lane and the recommendation basically resolved the issue for Doug, and he was a reasonable stakeholder in that, so I'm comfortable with the recommendation.
Yeah, that seems
Okay.
cool.
All right. Okay, next.
So that's the end of ski lanes. What's going
Right,
to
got one more. That's
we're still on
We've
ski
got
lanes,
a few more.
not on there, but there was definitely a couple of submissions about Bob's Code as well, wasn't there? And obviously it can't be really dealt with now, but do we put it in on a list
What was,
next time?
what were they asking for? That be reviewed?
didn't like it.
To delete it. It's a bit dangerous.
All right, well, we'll put it, let's have a list of things that we consider for future review, and we'll add that to the list. And we'll start this. I know there's a couple of others we need to talk about too. All right, so comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Do you want to do with Highway?
Yeah, so there's a few submissions touching on highway ski lanes, but I know we don't have any images on here. But basically, the crux of it is that the ski lane sits right in the middle between the two beaches, but they're about 300 meters walk and inaccessible any other way. And so both the submitters were asking for it to move further east towards the Esplanade Reserve. In order to make it more accessible for people actually to use it.
Right. I was funny, I asked Colin and Errol last night where the ski lane is, they don't even know, and they live above it.
Well, they don't live above it, it's actually further
Further across, so
It's sort of a
have you
no-man's
got
land.
any experience with the ski lane there, or do you even know where it is?
Yeah, 20 minutes, where did they like, they're east, it's not very on Main Beach.
Yeah. So you support moving it towards the Esplanade and what, half and half on the Esplanade and half to the west or something?
Proposing, yeah.
Okay, so the first one pole is basically in the middle of the Esplanade beach, and the rest of and it's to the east or west? West.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's only like it's like it's
Okay, that's great. I support that.
Sorry, can I just, we didn't recommend any changes to, like, the draft bylaw didn't propose any recommended changes to the highway ski lane, so.
but we still got submissions on it because I mean recommending no recommendations is still a recommendation. So,
We didn't notify any changes
Right.
to the ski lane.
okay, but this is something that's been submitted by the community and by other stakeholders, and they said even 2 years ago when ski lane went out that they also discussed a similar thing and it hadn't been reflected. So
So, I mean, it's correct that it's been put on the table by virtue of there being submissions.
Submissions,
We
that's
do
what it is, guys.
consider whether or not the interest in the issue would be such that we being remiss not to have consulted the wider community because we didn't.
In terms of not giving
Didn't
direction.
much. Is that something that we could go away and think about and come back to?
If you think it's a risk that needs evaluating, it's fine, but I think
Yeah.
from
But noted the panel's
Desires,
recommendation there,
recommendation.
and we just like to go back.
And look, I think it's fair to say that we think this is a good idea, but that, we'll monitor it and review it. Its effectiveness as well. I think I would signal that we make the change, but monitor it and review it for success. And that finds a little balance there.
yeah, well, I mean, if there's
Because, that same rationale wouldn't apply just to go back to Bob's Cove. Wouldn't apply to that, would it? Because we would be talking about, based on the submissions, we'd be talking about removing it completely.
Closures
It hasn't been consulted
slightly
on.
different than I mean,
yeah,
Hywe is such an extensive beach that I don't think maybe one way or the other would be seen as being out of scope, but removing it completely might be, so.
yeah, it's just relocating for a bit of it, like further down so that people can use it. So changing its use case or relocating them.
I mean, we're happy to come, if you think there's any risk there, come back to us on that, but otherwise I think we're comfortable.
Yeah, and so sorry, but as far as the Bob's Code, are we ready to let that
We can let that
for
sit.
future review?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, next slide, you've got access lanes. All right, tell us where you're at with access lanes, because this was contentious and a little confusing. I think we need to.
You had an updated picture, didn't you, showing the current recommendation on that ski lane?
Well, we had this, but I'm not sure it's necessary. Yeah, it's just a different approach to looking at it. But although, yeah, you're right, it doesn't.
But it
include
gets rid of all the
drainage.
other stuff that's not included anymore.
But I'd
Well,
like to, let the regulatory team talk to.
Yeah.
Feel us to spread out. I'll take something to shut up, pass through. There's obviously a challenging area, there's a bit going on, and this was raised in the purpose of the commercial passenger transport submission. There is options within this space to define who can use that lane, so it could be defined down to commercial passenger transport services mainly,
This is the Hilton one,
the water taxi.
as in the Hilton lane, not the bridge lane.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Which one would you like to talk about first?
So
That's fine, just be.
there's a few things. So the first is obviously the scale of the access lane, where we extend it or not. And the second thing is the $1 million cruise interaction. So maybe we'll deal with the scale of it first and the purpose of it, and then the $1 million cruise thing, if that's okay with you, Chair.
Yeah, and well, I think Anto's point was that the western one, which is the access lane for the Hilton, we'll call it. Look, if you can restrict that to commercial passenger transport, I think that makes sense, because it really, outside of the water taxi and even $1 million cruises, I just didn't really see any particular purpose for that. I did accept their point about coming off the plane at the right time and whatever, but beyond that, no one else needs to worry about it.
Other than the
So-
fact that it slightly overlaps the ski lane potentially.
Yeah, well, that's even better for us if it's only commercial operators. They'll be more aware and contextual. I mean, it's a bit like the Cleaver is that the commercial operators aren't the problem. They really are, because they've got a vested interest in making sure they're operating safely. So, so yes, we can do that that's dedicated for commercial and passenger.
Yeah, we're
operators.
talking about, so just to make sure, definitely, just talking about one way
Yep.
strip. As you touched on, it seems to be a similar approach to the Clifford.
Okay. All right. So now let's move on to are you comfortable with that?
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Now move on to the main access lanes and the $1 million cruises.
So again, I'll touch on it and likely pull in some further information. And that, again, it's very similar to what we just touched on. The main submitter was $1 million cruise, and the fact that they have a resource consent to allow them to go into that space and operate slightly in contention to the access lanes. We do feel that there's the ability to narrow down who can operate in that fashion while having those access lanes as well. So it would be different to say commercial passenger service vehicles or vessels would not likely be saying that consented operations have similar language to the way in which the political operators.
Yeah.
And again, as you touched on in regards to the reason for that, the commercial operators understand what's happening in the environment, and the vessel itself, particularly the $1 million cruise, sits at such a heightened scale that there's awareness that there was a jet skis, for example, sitting behind those willows, becoming a bigger issue, so we wouldn't really want to have.
Okay, so am I correct in understanding that any jet boat can operate in the downstream and upstream lane normally, commercial or otherwise?
So I've actually got
Other wording.
it might be worth, sorry, it looks like a lot, but essentially these are really important to understand because they tell us how the access lanes in this location are to be used. So so what it essentially says is that well, maybe it's worth just having a read. I don't necessarily need to read it out, but I think that this provision here, and so 38.1 and 38.3 B and A and B are the two that are important.
Vessels proceeding downstream must be navigated through the second arch with the control. Are the arches labelled?
So
okay, right, all right. So the second arch is meaningful. Okay, right. From the true right of the bank of the. So that helps. Okay, the vessel proceeding upstream must give it the sixth arch from the true right bank of the coral. Okay, so that's fine.
so
Is this wording immediately below the downstream gate or above the upstream gate? Is that problematic? What does immediately mean in that context?
yeah, so that's the I suppose the clincher for this is that it doesn't say specifically that a vessel cannot proceed up the downstream or down the upstream.
Right.
It talks about not resting or stopping immediately below. So I mean,
Is immediately help or the areas below the downstream? I know it gets a bit ambiguous, but
so I think when you look at it from a navigation safety perspective, I think, you know, these access lanes have been identified and labelled downstream and upstream. So, you know,
is the whole of that access lane immediately, or is it in proximity or something? Can we change?
Well,
In proximity.
It should say, you know, they are the access lanes, but the downstream and the upstream is relates to the gates rather than the lanes so much.
Yeah.
What's marked there as downstream is the direction to the downstream gate.
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily, if you're further up, not immediately above the bridge. And in fact, the immediately was for the upstream one and downstream the downstream one. It doesn't stop anyone from reading those rules, particularly the $1 million cruise, from going back up.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't that yeah, but we're talking about the gates themselves because at the moment we have an access lane upstream but not downstream, even though the rule refers to downstream.
Downstream,
immediately downstream.
the speed uplift, anyways, isn't it? Separate.
Well, but they still can't stop in the below the gate.
They must proceed. So one of the key provisions, so that's why I've copied through the conduct and access lanes provisions as well. These are really important. So if you're using any access lane, you must proceed as per what it says here. So the most direct route as near as possible to the outer limit of it. No person can swim in there. No person can access in a manner that's dangerous. So there's lots of different sort of provisions in there that sort of place some restrictions on how it's used, but it doesn't directly say you cannot proceed down the up or up the down. So yeah, that's what the provisions say.
Yeah. I think the real risk for that, and the reason for that rule number 38.1 is that when you are going through those gates, you're going through at speed and you're blind to what's on the other side of them to some extent.
Yeah.
So if you get up through the gate coming upstream,
and you're committed.
Suddenly there's someone,
the point is you're committed at that
someone
point.
sitting
You
down,
can't
that's right.
back out. You've got that's the
And the same
you
if
want
you're
to
going
expect
down
them.
and you end up down in the river and suddenly a boat in front of you, you haven't got much chance to.
But the question is, what does immediately mean, and should those areas be mapped to define it? And if it's, it actually, I mean, you don't want someone upstream of the downstream gate as much as you don't want someone downstream of the upstream gate. So that it's actually should extend in both directions and be basically a protected area where you can't stop.
Are you talking about downstream of the dam?
Yeah, well, that's how the rule reads.
Yeah, it's not how it's shown on this plan though, is it?
Well, that's my point. That's my point, is that the rule reads that you can't stop below the bridge, below the gate 2 either.
So
But
could you,
it's not
just,
mapped.
could you just mark them back on that plan, on that photo? Could you just mark them both, because they're also, we were talking about extending them out so they get a little bit further away from the shore as well. Just mark them both as access lanes and then nearer the bridge have the colours upstream and downstream.
Oh, but you don't want people zooming through.
There's no stopping on the other side of the bridge anyway.
Right.
So no stopping.
How far?
Pretty much right down the young sisters.
Okay, well, maybe that solves it. Maybe that solves it then. Because people don't, the commercial operators don't stop below the bridge before they
idle to keep jets, the Microsoft, and they take off again. It's only coming back up into the lake, so we don't drag it back into the lake, but getting downstream, no, we can't stop.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. There's 2 issues here for me. One is the word immediately, because I think that's ambiguous, and secondly, how we deal with that bit in between the hatched area in between. Have we resolved that?
Can we say instead of immediately, can we say within so many metres?
Possibly. Just on your point, Chair, around the hatched areas in between, and so here and here, I'll invite the regulatory team to talk to that.
Just on that, so going back to that, well, there's no stopping in the access lanes anyway, is there? Okay, so maybe I'm overthinking it, because the immediately becomes irrelevant because there's no stopping anyway. Is that right?
If you're in the access lane, the only place to stop would be between the access lanes.
So you can't obstruct.
So yeah, I mean,
you can stop, but you can't obstruct
the most direct route through. So
so you can't linger.
43.4, no person within an access lane may proceed in any manner that is dangerous in relation to any vessel or other person in the access lane.
that's given.
So I think the Kauro Dam one is the one that talks about you cannot stop immediately, or rest or stop. So I think that's the tension with the.
Where's the rule that relates to the no stopping downstream? Is that a separate ruling?
You talked
No
about
stopping zone.
There's no stopping zone. I'm not sure where it comes under Quarry jet, and really instead of haven't operated that way for years. No stopping.
But has it got status in the bylaw though?
No, it's the first quarter. Yeah, 18, 38.1.
Well,
That doesn't string gate. That's only relating to the immediately up above and below. You're talking a couple hundred metres, aren't you? So maybe there's either an assumption that doesn't fit or a rule that we haven't seen. So,
and John Edmonds also had a alternative wording for that rule, didn't he? But actually, I don't think it needs to change from what's on here.
That's my view. Yeah.
all right. Well, let's try and settle this. So, are we comfortable with the current wording?
you'll have you leaving immediately in there. Or unless you wanted to put in within 30 metres or.
Oh, wasn't paying too much.
Yeah,
All right, we'll leave that. We've got the access lane, upstream, downstream access lane, we've settled. We've got the other one sorted. All right, the bit in between, tell us about that and $1 million cruises.
I think the easiest way to describe it is that area is not appropriate for recreational craft to be lingering. Having a $1 million cruiser relies on that space from the submission, and we believe there is opportunity to enable
Consent holder.
consent. Yeah, very similar wording to the nature of how to manage the cruiser with commercial operators.
Yeah.
And for the same reasons that they're aware of the area, they've got their own safe operating plans that their vessels people can see.
Okay. All right.
So some wording will need to be worked out. So that I think
Okay. So do we map it on there, or do we just rely on the wording? Is the hatch area mapped or not?
Well, it's an exemption based on the consent.
Well,
what the mapping
exempt
does,
by description or by
correct me if I'm wrong, Luke, but having it mapped there automatically restricts people from doing and stopping in that space because it's part of the access lane.
Yeah, so that it'll come under, so any vessel movements in the area will be covered by clause 43, which is conduct and access lanes, which again here it talks about how you must proceed according to these sub clauses. It doesn't, so proceed doesn't mean make way necessarily, but it means you must. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but that hatching between the two lanes is only for the basis of one submission for them to turn from the upstream lane to the downstream lane, isn't it? Does it need?
Yeah, but it's. I mean, the access lanes are here. Basically, they're an uplift. They're a speed uplift as well.
Yeah.
In that allows them to stay on the plane and do the loop back around when they're training and whatever is what they described it.
But they can go out around the island.
They can go around the island. Yep. And or out beyond 200 metres. Yeah.
So I understand from early discussion that so the area above and below the Willow Island here presents some navigation safety risks as people, vessels could stop in there and then leave and present a hazard to those who are proceeding up or down these extended access lanes. So what we had talked about potentially, and Anto, correct me if I'm wrong, so this is where we're sort of in before, specifically having wording that would exclude vessels, recreational vessels from entering this area or this area. Is that?
Well, can we map that bit in between and just say no stopping area except for the consent operator, and then we're sort of but we still have to speed up the problem for the ones that are circling around because they're within 200 metres of the shore.
But I don't think
The depth does allow them to make a turn dropping off the plane back down the high speed lane. So while there are some areas that they need to be at high speed because of the draft, that's not one of them.
No, but in terms of practical, that they're wanting obviously to loop around and keep moving. They're not going to be up and
They're a consented operator as well, though, so they could be put in the same.
well. Okay, so we rely on their consent.
Yeah, the wording's broader.
Okay, but it's not just $1 million cruises. We can account for those other guys, and we're not really dealing with private jet boaters anyway. So for that purpose,
That's right.
okay. So we have a no stopping zone with exemptions for consent holders. Okay, done.
so. Hang on, confused there. So the bit in the circle, is that staying hatched or does it not need to be
The
hatched?
whole lot's going to be mapped as a no stopping in between the two access lanes. It will be mapped as a no stopping area with an exemption for consented operators.
Okay.
And that deals with the 2 jet boat operators and $1 million cruises. And everybody else can go get stopped because we don't want them there.
And will it stop? Will it stop at the end of the hatch box, or will it carry all the way onto the
It
bridge?
can go all the way down the bridge. It can be the whole area in between the two access lanes, because otherwise we're just creating a conflict that we can't manage anyway.
Create clarity, but
Yeah, just become a no stopping area completely.
What if, just playing devil's advocate, what if someone recreationally in their jet boat does want to stop and look at the bridge?
Well, no,
Doesn't give them any room to do that, does it at all?
No, we don't want them to.
In the gap in between the two lanes?
Yeah, we don't want them to.
Okay.
Yeah, because if they drift, they could easily drift into an access lane, you know, and create another big block and create hazards. It's a small area.
The other problem we have there is people beach their boats on the Willows Island, do some fishing, and then when they come off, they're coming out in front of two boats up on the plane at 70 km/h.
Yeah.
No, but,
Did anyone, did anyone ever, there was a laptop computer on the lake bed there a couple of years ago, did anyone ever pick that up? It was right in that downstream lane.
Okay, no, I think we're sorted there. We've got quite clear that we're there's two access lanes and providing to the commercial operators, and the rest is clear. Okay,
And so none of the grey area, just to confirm it here, that's all out.
that's all out. So that, yeah, effectively that's unnavigable because they can't exceed 5 knots for the most part.
And so you're satisfied with the panel that it deals with the MDC submission also?
MDC.
Sorry, the legal processes.
Well, that's.
Well,
anyway,
that's right, because they're a consent holder, they can access the downstream lane. They can hold there because their consent allows them to. And then they're going to access through the downstream lane, but it's still an access lane. They're not actually conflicting with the wording there, although it's clear on the intent. So, yeah.
And just to, I suppose, raise the point, so in the future resource consent applicants could also apply and at the time.
Well, I think the wording on the clutha is consent holders. So if a new consent is granted, it can be granted. You know, the harbour master would be consulted. They'll go, yeah, we can work within the bylaw. The consent can be granted, and that fits in with the bylaw. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Next. Hang on, it's sorted. It's always okay. Harbour master.
So this, just to confirm, this is just the provisions that we recommended, the officers recommended further amendments on from the submissions. There are others that relate to BSID that you could.
Yeah. Okay. I think register. Okay. I think that's fine. Any dramas there? Fairly technical.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. Yep. Fine with that. Recommended.
So once again, similar situation, just the additional officer recommendations in the right and the consultation version on the left.
Allow to press review of decisions on the.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Organised. So. Amend the wording. Further interpretation. So can you just expand on that?
Which one?
Organise, the bottom one. So, I mean,
yes.
Ricky, does this require approval for a sailing regatta or a wind riders event or a informal water ski event or whatever?
I think it's more along the lines, we just need to be informed of activities taking place, so we're aware of them, and we put out to other operators on the lakes that this is going to happen.
Yes, the wording for the explanatory note is in yellow here. I could pass it over if you'd like to read it. It's obviously not a rule, it's just an explanatory.
Organised water activities typically include pre-planned events involving multiple participants. This can include activities for the specific purpose, such as regattas, races, group excursions, or any other event, including club events that is coordinated and involves a group of people. They will not typically include spontaneous, impromptu, or ad hoc gatherings of small groups of friends or family who did not intend to undertake a coordinated competitive activity. So, what does that mean for regular sailing, club sailing on a Thursday night or whatever? Is it sufficient that you're aware that they sail on a Thursday night, or do you need them to log subverted
I think
requests?
it's more on the lines of one-offs, which we don't encounter like every Thursday night. We know we're going to be out there.
So if the yacht club are running a specific regatta, it's useful that you know about it anyway, but it's only you only need to know that informally. You don't need to have a event plan and anything like that. It's just notification.
And you mentioned the other day, didn't you, about them having some sort of annual plan or annual submission that says what they're going to do on a regular basis. Kind of
Yeah, these are regular activities. I'm just trying to, have we determined whether those pro forma included? Or is it-
The pro forma what application form?
Yeah,
Well, it's on the website. There is one. So I think what we talked about is that there's lots of different ways that council could engage with clubs, and I think that's something that you're going to be working on with regards to temporary event.
Yes, so I think the intention behind this is, especially with the clubs in that nature, is for council to be informed and also so they can inform other users. So it's not intended to overcomplicate the process. The bylaw requires council to be notified. So I think it depends on the nature and scale of the type of event. So for example, it's training on a Sunday, that wouldn't require an application as such. It might just be heads up, this is happening. If it's a larger event where it might need to be considered whether or not there does need to be, I guess, further understanding of what's taking place, then that can be explored. But it's essentially trying to ensure that council's made aware of all the events that's happening across the water.
I think coordinated and competitive sounds like a good way of describing what an event is. I sort of wince a little bit at group excursions being included in it. Just more like coordinated competitive activity feels like, yeah, something's happening and it's good that harmonise is notified.
Can we specifically exclude regular training operations of the different
I would still like to be notified, though. The club might just tell us annually, did this generally do things, because it's partly around assisting those groups.
Yeah, I know that. Look, I support the relationship component. I'm just trying to avoid over regulation, perception over regulation. Really, I just want people to be able to get on and do what they do without. Look, as I said, I police support. In fact, one of the guys came down and spoke to the guys at the Young Club the other day just because, and that was great because it's just relationship building.
It's good for us as well, though, if we know at the beginning of the season, if you're going to be training every Thursday night, we can build it into a calendar so we can see all the operations around the waterways at any given time, whether it be a training session or a one-off event. So it gives us a step view of what's going on.
Okay.
Good.
So are we comfortable with that, or is it over?
The principle, yeah, I mean, this is an explanatory, I think it's more just for context more than legal backing. So, in that respect, I feel like it's probably fine to
So meeting organised. Okay. There you go, guys. I just think we need to keep that reasonably informal so that it's a conversation rather than a requirement. Yeah,
One potential approach to that is that we, and the waterways events forms are under development to try and figure out how to get the right information and include some triggers. So whether it be
thresholds
for a speed up lift or an exclusion zone, or maybe even an amount of people could be spoken of in that needing further.
Okay. All right. Well, let's work on that. And, you know, if you guys develop a system of speaking to the clubs at the beginning of the season, getting a calendar, you know, that will deal with most of it.
Yeah.
And then, you know, just developing those relationships so they can pick up the phone and say, oh, look, we're just having something next weekend.
It's really just to capture those one-off events,
Yeah.
that surprises information approach, etc.
Yeah, I get that. All right, so Cody, you'll have thoughts on this one. Communication devices. So we're moving two forms of communication, one form for within between 50 and 300 metres, which is if that's right, is it? That's the current proposal.
So what the provisions did is introduce a requirement for if you're on a non-powered vessel on a river, you have to carry at least one form of communication. If you are on a non-powered vessel within 50 metres of the shore of a lake, then you can just have your voice or whistle is sufficient. And there was an exclusion for a sporting event, and if you're sit outside of any, that's correct, yes. If you sit outside of any of those, then and you're on a powered vessel, for example, then you're on a 2 kilometres devices. That's the baseline requirement. So the officer's recommendation response to submissions introduced an intermediary sort of position where we thought 50 to 200 metres from the shore of a lake could be sufficient to have just one form of communication. In terms of the distance that might be appropriate, I mean, I'll let the regulatory team comment on the 200 metre limit, but if they feel that they want to, but there's also scope for panel to choose different limits if they want to.
Okay. All right. Well, look, I think from where I'm, and there's two issues here. One is I think the 50 to 200 metres thing is a bit relevant because I think it's well, firstly, people can't judge that distance anyway, but it also creates 3 levels of complexity, which I just think is, well, 4 in fact, if you include the rivers. I want to simplify it, and I also have a problem with it on small craft. Below a certain size, whether it be windsurfers or wing foilers or kayakers even, I have some trouble with that in terms of practicality and sort of reasonableness.
Yeah, no, it's sort of the same thing. I think, being able, I think most people will have a self-governing approach if they're going to go beyond the shoreline, and I think the practicality sits more in if you're in a powered vessel versus a non-powered vessel having a communication device. I think otherwise the amount of exemptions and other sorts of requirements to manage it just doesn't seem practical. And I think as well the idea of always having to take a phone, even if you're a river float with a big group of people, every single person would have to take a phone rather than not between a group, or I don't know, it just feels overly prescriptive for a lot of different reasons. So I'm far more inclined to put the focus on communication onto powered vessels.
So what's the outcome of that? So no one in a non-powered vessel will need to carry any communication?
Well, not legally, you wouldn't be forced to. That's sort of my flip on that sort of thing. And most people who will need to, because they currently do, like if they are traversing long areas. I just think the provision of it is practical for many sports that if I went kite foiling or something, and like to John G's point, there's just a certain level of practicality that comes to, even if you get in trouble, reaching through your life jacket to pull your phone out to call who, what's the real practicality? Who's going to say? Well, I mean, it's sort of it makes sense on powered vessels, because you can get stuck out there and it's all practical, but that just feels like overreach to me.
So, okay, the question is, how do we resolve it? I mean, how do we word it to match that? Or do you have any thoughts, Gavin? Are you comfortable? Where's your level of comfort on this?
Yeah, I mean, you put it into some context. I guess if someone had a kayak and wanted to kayak across Frankton Arm, because it's more than 400 metres or more than 200 metres wide, they need effectively to have 2 forms of communication under that, wouldn't they? And do they need one at all? Anything at all?
I mean, the argument is most people don't go into many places without their phone anyway.
No.
And so, and I get that it's, but like it's sort of like forcing people to always be in contact on things like it. But yeah, I just think.
Can we create a distinction or a threshold for the size of vessel or type of use that makes sense?
Possibly, if that was what from memory, I had to go double check the Safer Boating Forum produced a bit of evidence on which we based our proposed provisions, which identifies that vessels that are 6 meters or less in length, I think, are the ones that predominantly had the fatalities if they weren't carrying a communication.
That's what I was going to ask. What's the?
But I can't. Yes, don't quote me on that because I just have to go.
I'll look at it.
There is something to
I
that.
suspect that's probably right, except we're dealing with areas like the Hauraki Gulf and stuff where there's a fair bit of country to.
And ocean swell and rips and the whole.
Yeah,
things
yeah,
that
and
are-
they have a bit of noise.
I'm not sure
your way.
it's just that. But
No, but no.
Would you like, trying to support getting an outcome here? We're trying to, this is new to the bylaw, so this is quite fresh. And it's been guided by Maritime New Zealand's desire to have something within the bylaws.
That's
See,
maritime
you
being the key bit there, because I think maritime is distinctly different, but yeah.
What's the evidence of what's been happening out on the water? I mean, how many boats larger than 6 meters and how many smaller than 6 meters are ending up getting into trouble
Without,
on our lakes and rivers with or without communication devices?
I don't have the facts right now on me, but we do have a district where we have a large number of tourists that grab things like kayaks and just go. It's trying to work out whether you're comfortable having these levels of restrictions within the bylaw. What's the minimum requirement, if any, you might choose to say you want it as an advice note to look at this.
Well, I'm comfortable that we encourage people,
Yeah.
but I'm not comfortable that we mandate it, and so, that we. I don't know, and it's whether it needs to be the bylaw, but you're essentially encouraging people to have the appropriate level of communication for their vessel and activity that they're undertaking, and the area that they're in. Beyond that, I think we're overreaching a little bit, because I think that, yeah, I mean, I can think of countless examples where, people on the wave at Harwea, people kayaking down the river, people floating between the outlet and Albert Town Bridge and stuff where, look, we've been doing it for decades without taking mobile phones with us until recently. Maybe you take one away, but, to have two is crazy. To have one is unnecessary, and it doesn't make it fundamentally dangerous that you're out of communication for 6 hours, 6 minutes, whatever. I don't know. I'm tempted to go down there. I'm happy for, whether it be 6 meter vessels or something, those that can go further up the lake and stuff, to have something that a UHF radio or a whatever, but
In terms of maritime,
VHF radio.
sorry, in terms of maritime New Zealand rules and laws, a bylaw is in addition to existing rules and laws, correct? So in terms of their rules around communication devices, what are they? Like, now you say you take it from the state, if it comes from that level anyway, would there be a need to include it into the bylaw? Is my sort of where I'm getting with that.
Well,
So you've got the maritime NZ rule. It's not specific to this.
Can speak to that a little bit. I looked into this yesterday, and actually Part 91, the Maritime Transport Act, which is sort of what governs the use of recreational vessels, it doesn't actually speak to communication devices like it does life jackets. So it doesn't have an overarching provision on communications device for recreational craft. Commercial crafts is totally different, part of the Maritime Transport Act. And I also backed that up with a phone call to the South Island Regional Regulatory Maritime New Zealand guy and asked how it was handled in other areas, and he said no, there's no maritime mandate on it. Certainly encouraged, but there isn't no overarching.
I think that's again, I feel like the right approach, encourage communication, but it's not mandate. And I think we're trying to help people from prevent drownings or hypothermia. I don't think a phone's going to help. It's sort of, I'm getting cynical, but I think that, it's need to be reasonably pragmatic around this. And I think people have a level of ownership that they take over their own responsibility for a large amount of it. And I'm far more in favour of, supporting good practice, but not putting it into a bylaw and mandating it. Because I feel like there'll be plenty of instances that will come up that just seem impractical. And there'll be a huge pushback from the community.
Okay, so you're saying we're going to head with this, I think. I presume the previous bylaw had no communication requirements. Okay, so I'm going to suggest that we reject this proposal and that we concentrate on educating and advising people to have appropriate communication. But did you have something?
Yeah, just commenting, I think there was a lot of pushback. There was actually there was 47 of the responses supported it, 38 opposed, 23 were neutral, and 31 had no response, just to
put in context. Okay. The alternative is, as I said, we go to 6 metres. If you're 6 metres above, you have a appropriate communication device, being a VHF or mobile phone, for 6 metres and above.
I'm happy with that. If it's a way forward. I mean, I've also got a powered vessel because encompass vessels that are under 6 metres.
As in jet skis and stuff.
As in jet skis, as in 18-foot boats.
All right, let's do that then. So we go powered vessels, or any vessel over 6 metres is required to carry
at least
one form of communication suitable for its location. So if you're in mobile phone reception, that's fine. If you're not, it has to be something else like VHF or sat phone. And an advice note that we recommend that other users have communication or supervision relative to their vessel type and activity. Yeah.
So does that then mean that everyone who's roaring around on a jet ski more than 50 metres from shore needs to have their cell phone?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that reasonable?
Yeah. Well, most people, if you have a jet ski, you'd be fine because I said jet ski guys.
Yeah. Not a jet ski, right? Wouldn't know.
Okay, I'm comfortable with
so
that.
was there a 50 metre, did you say there was a 50 metre?
Well, we're keeping that 50 metre. So even if it's like more than 50 metres from shore.
I'm going to say
Doesn't matter anymore because it's
Okay, so any powered vessel or any vessel more than 6 metres.
So before we move forward, say there's 2 people on a jet ski, does that require 2 forms of communication or 2 cell phones?
It's a charge.
It's the person operating the vessel that matters.
So this is only speaking to the person operating, is that clear?
Yep.
This is operating. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Just for your guys' sake, I guess it's nice to have some vessels with these devices, even if not everyone has.
Yeah.
If someone gets in trouble, it's just people out there.
I agree.
Okay. Move on. Okay, so we've dealt with Foxco, it's on the future review.
Yeah. Just noting that it's actually been added to the map because it hasn't actually been identified in the previous bylaw either.
It was scheduled but not mapped. Okay, right, that's no big deal.
So on that topic though, have we thought any more about including things like those photos that you've marked up in the bylaw so that every ski lane's got a nice clear picture of where it is?
We had discussed that further, and I think part of that conversation was around whether or not we identify the land poles as well in the bylaw. At a minimum, it's expected to create those beautiful maps that you refer to.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's as an online resource or within the actual bylaw, I'm sure at this point, but there will be that.
Well, I think, I mean, they're really good because when you had those ones the other day and then also the new ones you brought up today as well, it makes it really easy to talk about it because we're all looking at where it is. And I think personally that would be good to have them in the bylaw and available online. So they're available to people to read.
Yeah, I think it's clearer if we've got clear, if people can understand what we're talking about, so the better those maps are, the better. Yep.
And then following on from that as well, the comment came up about the swim lanes, whether they could be in a similar fashion. Yeah.
They can have they can be on a map and have an advice note saying this is a swimming area but without status is I think where we landed on that.
Mm.
Yeah, so this is it's not a reserved swimming area, but it's the things like the two swim lanes and the reserves, all the swim area at Ely Point are actually notated on those same maps.
Is it formal areas?
Yeah, as a beware of swimmers in this area or something. This area is frequented by lake swimmers behind the buoy line or something like that. All right, Lake Johnson, that looks reasonably straightforward, just a spelling thing. 406, and this is interesting, someone referred to 406, but I've always seen them as type 1 and type 2 and type 3 BFDs. Is 406 a common?
Maritime New Zealand on the website, they have a bunch of different classifications now. 406 is actually a specific type 1 of many approved, Maritime New Zealand approved life jackets, and it can actually be the most commonly worn sort of kayaking vest. Yep, vest that the kids wear would be a 406. 406 can have a hood or not.
Or not, yeah.
So 406 actually limits, if we're suggesting they should have this sort of a lesser life jacket than some of the other ones that are specified. So just having 406 is
not
too.
helpful.
I think that was just an error.
Okay, so we removed the reference to 406. Fine. Okay.
Previously, there was a whole bunch of types referenced.
Okay. Yeah. Let's keep it clean. Keep it clean. You guys can, they're required to wear a life jacket. You can enforce that, and you go, that's not the right sort of life jacket. This is the right sort of life. Is that how you treat it?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So we've addressed the Ely Point minor error omission. There's another one here that I just want to bring to your attention, which is the new provision which enables vessels operating under resource consent to operate on the Clutha River. In the upper part of the Clutha River above the Albert Town Bridge, we just need to include the details of that in table 1.
That's fine. I'll take your advice that it's tidy. Yeah.
So the Hunter River speed uplifting, there was a bit of discussion from Jetboat New Zealand about that. So we just wanted to bring this this sort of flow diagram to your attention because it essentially takes you through how the Hunter River speed uplifting came about. So in the 2005 bylaw review, there was no uplift proposal on the Hunter River. JBNZ requested the 1st November to 30 April uplift. At the time, the hearings panel didn't think that there was insufficient, they thought there was insufficient consultation to include it in the bylaw, so they referred it to the Wanaka Community Board for comment. And the next box along just says that at the time, the district plan actually did enable jet boating on the Hunter River between 1st November and 30 April, but because the bylaw didn't, it's a conflict between them. In terms of they weren't able to go faster than 5 knots basically, which was a bit of a nonsense because you sort of can't. So the Wanaka Community Board considered it and recommended that the status quo should prevail, so there's no uplift. the hearing panel actually disagreed and thought there was no compelling nuisance grounds to continue with the speed restriction from the Hunter River. So the bylaw proposed for adoption included an uplifting, or as requested by JBNZ, from 1st November to 30 April. However, where the council could not reach agreement on a proposed uplifting recommended by the hearings panel. So the status quo was adopted, i.e. no uplift, and then it was referred again back to the hearings panel for consideration. A council working party was established to consider the issue and determined that public consultation was required. An amendment to 2000 bylaw was adopted for consultation as a result of the working party's recommendation. Large number of submissions were received, divergent views, seemingly no common ground was reported in the document. The working party recommended a partial uplifting from that process from 1st November. Well,
So that's 2 6-week periods, is it?
Yeah, and that's what we've got. It was uplifting was adopted on 17 August 2010.
So is that what we've got 2 6-week periods that's at either side of the.
So the purpose of showing you this was to demonstrate that it's been quite a.
Yeah,
I
I
was
understand
really
that.
impressive. I bet you could follow this through.
So I suppose our advice is that the JBNZ submission of relief, which requests an uplifting as per that 1st November to 30 April in its entirety is out of scope of this bylaw development process. Because A, we haven't consulted on it, it wasn't our statement of proposal, but B, there's clearly been a lot of work and a lot of interest from the community in this previous process to get we've got to at the moment.
That's really helpful context. Yeah, I think I'll have you support that sort of recommendation.
So there's a recommendation to leave it as it is now.
That's correct.
Okay, and so, well, I don't think we've got scope to change it anyway, because we haven't, and then do we put it on that list to consider review of it in the future?
Possibly.
Or is that signalling too much to, I suppose, or is that keeping them enough?
Well, one thing that I would add as well is that actually under clause 40 of the bylaw, which relates to speed upliftings,
They can get an uplift anyway on
it's not 40.
They can get an uplift on request anyway, sometimes.
Right. So you could recommend that it was part of the work program, or possibly you could recommend that we rely on the existing bylaw provisions in clause 50, which provides for any person to request it. So technically, JBNZ could request an uplifting to join those two dots up.
Okay. So, all right. So we maintain the status quo. We acknowledge that an uplift is available to them under request to the harbour master, and that it's considered for future reviews of the bylaw. Okay. Yeah. All right. Next.
I think that actually, sorry, this was another provision just for interest. The district plan actually prohibits any recreational commercial jet boating on the Hunter River, and in fact, all of these areas, but in this case, between May and October on the Hunter River. That was just for additional context.
So it's actually got a prohibition as well as
that's correct.
An uplift issue. Yeah.
So that's the end of this presentation, but of course, it's
okay. So there's something else this was the naming and labelling was one we didn't cover up. So, I mean, I suppose that
naming vessels.
Yeah, I mean, this is one that once again I think is comfortable that larger boats, power boats, and probably similar to the radio one is that we use power boats and 6 meters as the threshold for naming.
Right, but we'd already addressed vessel ID.
There
was you did have a slide up there, it was just about wording and who it was visible by. And
so sorry, I took that to be the.
Oh, sorry. Okay, let's go back to that just briefly.
There might be a few more points on it.
I mean, I've been thinking about that a bit, and Where is it?
So these were just the recommended amendments as opposed to the whole provision.
Oh, okay, so, I mean, those bits are fine, because you're just saying that you're aligning the VHF registration with the name, is that what?
Those are, yeah, that's a reasonably minor. So these were minor amendments to the, sorry, I don't know if we skipped through this, but I have it as a tick here, but, so
Okay.
those are very minor amendments.
Okay. All right, well, just to signal where I'm thinking that I don't think it's particularly practical or even enforceable to have small craft.
So these were this very, the last provision, isn't it, which relates to just the name and number. I think we talked.
Yeah, and I did
But
that.
also, I think 18.1 navigator vessel, excluding the list, of course, and 18.3.
I think it was the 18.4.
Yeah, so you've got a provision for non-power driven vehicles of 6 meters or less, which tilts your point.
Okay, so
This
they don't.
solid pedal scores of 6 meters or less. And this which is technically being operated on waterways in the district, which display markings that comply with an indication requirement within the navigation sector of the region in which this normally operates. Existing names, that's fine.
Okay, so small kayaks and paddle boards and everything are exempt anyway.
Apart from that, they need to, so vessels referred to in subclause 18.3, which is the list that you just read out, they must be marked with the current owner's name and contact details somewhere on the vessel. I think that might have been.
Yeah.
See, I think even that's probably a little bit unnecessary. I'll put that in the advice note thing. We recommend that they name and label them to assist, but I just don't.
You're allowed to play the jandle, does it need it?
No, and that's what I'm saying about a little bit is you have to label every device that you float down the Clutha on.
I'm
Every vessel.
not honestly, I'm guilty of literally labeling everything on and all the stuff. So like generally it's order of the thing, but yeah.
So if we can just note that minor change that we just don't.
We're not opposed to your position on it. I just want to make sure it's
informed yet.
Informed. There's a particular issue around the number of vessels on each of our lakes at the moment. It's been ongoing for some time. So, and when the lakes come up, they wash away. You end up with phone calls. We'll certainly go a long way in assisting a project in the future to look at.
I know.
It's
not for the most part. It's not strictly a navigation safety issue. I know there are cases where, but having a name on it doesn't stop the kayak floating into the middle of the lake and becoming a navigation hazard.
It's just we can call that.
No, but it doesn't.
Sort of thing.
I don't think it's strictly a navigation safety issue. Look, it's useful. It's from a purely administrative perspective. I'm just not sure it's going to be super helpful in terms of
for practical use. It'd be very
helpful. I know.
That's not saying we need to do it. Just when we deal with projects around some of the stuff in the future, it'll just be a topic that comes up if we don't know who these things belong to.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you are to accept there's going to be some kayaks stored along the beach, then that can be a condition of that. That's almost a reserve issue or something like that. But
do you have a process for collecting them and disposing of them if they've been abandoned?
It's going to be very, very big project. Yeah. It's likely to be coming your way at some point. It's a huge project and it takes a lot of people.
Well, someone offered that the scouts would do it or something the other day, I think, and that they would auction them off and raise some money or something. But anyway,
Money for the long term.
yeah, let's do a council. All right. So, are we settled on those things then?
What am I settling on?
Well, are you comfortable that we don't have names and numbers, or do you want names and numbers?
No, I mean I appreciate the ease of it, and I think we can do some messaging. Some of stuff, particularly if you're storing your vessel either in a lake, permanently on a reserve, but yeah, this is sort of for a blanket rule.
I think the powerboats is good because they're the ones that you're usually chasing down around speeding and life jackets and stuff, and you can then match up with your cameras and your descriptions. So I'm comfortable. Yeah, it adds a little bit of accountability. So I'm comfortable with that. I just think that the smaller vessels just is a little bit.
So
Yeah.
the thing is that this actually deals with a few.
Yeah. Oh, but yeah. But as I said, the name and number thing, I'd just get rid of that.
Is it just the 18.4 then?
Yeah,
Because that's-
Just 18.
Just 884. Yeah.
Everything else is in support.
Everything else is fine.
So, okay, cool.
Okay. All right. Is there anything
Or
else?
did you say you could include it as an advisory note?
Well, yeah, we could have an advice saying we recommend that small craft be numbered and named and numbered or something.
Bear in mind that most people are leaving their boat on the side of the lake, but we don't read the bylaw.
Well, I know, but well, that's this point. They're not going to read the bylaw regardless of whether that's in there or not. So, they're actually trying to get around and convince people to write it. I mean, you could have an education program and 100, and a big notation in the bylaw. It's not going to get you any closer to having 50% of them named and numbered. So, I just don't think it's going to work.
So do we need to cover, is it already Elton Town Bridge?
Oh, yeah, okay.
We all agreed on it.
Are we comfortable with the upstream, downstream gate? It's basically like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was cheap.
Keeping in mind that I don't strictly think it's necessary, but I'm not opposed to it either. So.
I think generally well received though, wasn't it?
Well, that's right. Not
53 in support of proposed.
Yeah.
36 not sponsored.
good quality, mate.
Oh yeah. I think
All right. Is there anything else that we need to work through? I suppose that, we're obviously going to make a recommendation to council. So do you want to just circulate the final version and report?
With your recommended additions.
Yeah, with the any other final.
I think it probably would be better to leave it, and if we're having trouble drafting a report, to have captured everything here, that we might come to you at an event for your advice and information. Yeah, it probably creates an undue layer to suggest that we're gonna be chasing every hearing panel down.
So we're going to adjourn deliberations, or do we?
Well, the resolution that Luke referred to at the beginning is a 3-part one that was in the officer report.
Oh, okay.
Do we do that now, or do we do it
If you want us to resolve, or do you want us to adjourn so that we can come back?
Do it now.
You want us to resolve?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'll just refer to it. So, all right. I therefore move that we note the contents of the report, that we receive all submissions, including the late submission of Jet Boat New Zealand, because we noted that in the thing, and that was a bit of a point. We recommend a final form of the draft navigation safety bylaw be adopted with the changes and outcomes of this consultation process and deliberations of the panel.
I'll second that.
So I've just added and deliberations of the panel to that.
Where?
And
After.
in three, the bottom of 3, and deliberations of the panel at the end.
Yeah.
So Gavin has moved. I second, all in favour. Yes.
Yep.
So Jack's previous. Given that Marjorie's here, are you comfortable that I make, on behalf of the panel, make some comments to the media about the recommendation we'll be making to council? Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Thanks everyone.
Well done.
We're through this week, isn't it?